bleed out while we're parachuting down. Like, that's what's going on in my head. And then all of a sudden, I realize the greatest power of thankfulness. And in that moment, I was like, you know what? I had this thought go through my head. It was like, be thankful. And then all of a sudden, I started to just say things that I was thankful for. I was thankful for the wind blowing in my face. I was thankful for my husband letting me do this and paying for it. I was thankful for my death. No, just kidding. I just began to say things I was thankful for. I was thankful for my friend that's willing to jump out of this plane with me. I'm thankful for my partner, Sparky. He's going to strap me to him, and he's not going to let me die. Like, I just started saying the things that I was thankful for. And I don't know how to explain this to you until you actually feel it. But when I was talking to Boone about it, when I began to be thankful, I was so present in that moment. And I began to notice things that I hadn't noticed in a long time. And it was some kind of joy and some kind of peace that literally began to drain out. I felt like I was on a drain, and the fear was just draining out of my body. It was one of the most weirdest, I think maybe that moment was greater even than the skydive, because it caused me to realize the power of being thankful. Thanksgiving is so powerful. It's something we take kind of for granted, and it's a very lighthearted thing we just throw to the side. But we don't realize what it actually can do and how much it can change your life. And so we're going to look a little bit of when I was in that moment in that plane. There was 3 things that immediately began to take place, and I realized what happened. So before we jump into those 3 things, we're going to look at Thanksgiving for just one moment. So I wrote up here, Luke 22:19. And it says this, and he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, this is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. So give thanks reads in the original Greek, original, whatever you want to say, Eucharisto. That's the word that's in the original text. Okay, so it would say, and he took bread and he Eucharistoed. Okay, so give thanks is Eucharisteo. The root word for Eucharisteo is charis. I'm probably butchering how to say this, but we're going to go with it. Charis. And that word means grace. And so in the very middle of Thanksgiving, our translation for Eucharisteo is thanksgiving, basically, give thanks. In the middle of that word is the word grace. When you give thanks, you all of a sudden get to experience the fullness of God's grace. And then we'll take it a little bit farther. It says this, Eucharisteo, thanksgiving envelops the Greek for grace, charis, but also holds its derivative of the Greek word chara, meaning joy. When you give thanks, you experience the fullness of joy. You don't just get a happy feeling, but you get full. We sung about it this morning. You get to experience God's full joy, his full delight. So let me just ask you before we go any farther, is there anyone here that you would like maybe a little more peace, a little more joy in your life? Is anyone down for this? Okay, so we all need it. Perfect. So if you look at this, it's the word charis, Eucharisto, and chara. And the same thing, translating over to the English language, it's grace, thanksgiving, and joy. They're all enveloped in one cord. Okay? So this is mainly my point for this morning. I'm going to go quickly today because it's a simple message. Eucharisteo, thanksgiving, is always a present perspective to his presence, to God's presence. That's what Thanksgiving is. If I was to define Thanksgiving, it is being present, having a transformed perspective, and getting to experience the fullness of who God is. I would say that's what Thanksgiving is. So how do we experience this? I don't know if you can read that, but it says, it's Psalms 104 through 5. And it says this: enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him and bless his name. For the Lord is good, his mercy is everlasting, and his truth endures to all generations. The Bible tells us to enter into his gates, to enter into, we talk about the kingdom. To enter into the kingdom with thanksgiving. How do we enter into the life that he has for us? With thanksgiving. How do we enter into a life of bringing heaven to earth? Through thanksgiving. That's how we enter in to all that he has for us. Thanksgiving. And so I'm going to tie in eyes into this sermon just a little bit. I've talked a little bit about my eye because that's how I've learned Thanksgiving. Ironically, God has used, he didn't cause the problems in my eye, but he has used what the enemy meant to steal my thanksgiving, to steal parts of my life, to steal parts of my joy and my grace. God has used it to actually give me greater grace and greater joy, a greater perspective. So, a life of thanksgiving. This is from my friend. I actually don't know this lady, but we're friends at heart because I read her book. And if you know me, I never read books, so this is a big deal. Only the Bible. I read this book during the time of my eye when I was laying at my house, and her name is Ann Voskamp, and she wrote this book called 1,000 Blessings. If you want to go farther into this sermon, you can buy that book. But I'm going to highlight a lot of things that she pointed out to me. And so she wrote this and says, the practice of giving thanks, Eucharisteo, this is the way we practice the presence of God. We stay present to his presence. And it is always a practice of the eyes. We don't have to change what we see, only the way we see. And so this morning, I'm going to challenge you. Just literally like how my eyes have physically had to change how to see. I'm going to challenge you this morning to begin to change how you see. And that's through Thanksgiving. She goes on to say this more, and it says, how my eyes see, my perspective, is my key to enter into his gates. That's Thanksgiving, how we see. To enter into his gates. I can only do so with thanksgiving. If my inner eye has God seeping up through all things, then can't I give thanks for anything? And if I can give thanks for the good things, the hard things, the absolute everything, I can enter the gates to glory. Living in his presence is fullness of joy, and seeing shows the way in. That's what Thanksgiving does. Are you thankful? Are you thankful? So how do we become thankful people? How do we be a people that is always exuberating thanksgiving? And I found it in the plane. While we were flying in that plane, the first thing that happened to me was be present. And I felt this little thought go through my mind. It was like I was terrified to jump out of this plane, but I was trying to be the 3 C's, but I was not doing it so well. If you saw my hands, they were clenched together in this little ball. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this again. And then all of a sudden, this thought went through my head. And it was like, be in the moment. This moment will never, ever happen again. thankfully, I caught eyes with Daniela. She smiled really big, and I just made a goofy face. And I was like, in that moment, that fear began to leave. And I began to be present in that moment. Are you present in life? Or are you always thinking about the past? Or are you always thinking about what's happening next? Do you find yourself in conversations not even listening to the person because you're thinking about either what you're going to say next or what you have going on tomorrow? Are you present? We need to be a people that are present. If you know who Jack Taylor is, he's come and spoke here a couple times. He's honestly kind of like my spiritual grandpa. And he actually is the man who married Boone and I. And when Boone and I got married, Jack was, I believe, high 80s, 80-something years old, 86, 87, something like that. And so obviously, he's not going to be running out. But when Boone and him were going to come out to watch me walk down the aisle, he looked at Boone, he's like, Boone, you must develop the saunter. And Boone was like, what are you talking about? And he said, this is the saunter. It is called a purpose, what is it called? What is it? A slow, purposeful walk. And so that day when we got married, Boone grabbed Papa Jack's arm and they purposefully, it's like this little swag. They walked out with this swag. Slow, purposeful walk. Do you have a saunter? When you're going through life, are you going so fast that you're missing things? And when you're going through life, are you just doing your routine? Or are you actually missing the purpose of that moment or the purpose of your day? How to develop a saunter. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah? Because developing a saunter will cause you to slow down. It'll allow you to actually be in the moment, to be present. It actually usually causes you to stop thinking about yourself and actually see the world and see the other people around you and to see Jesus in that moment. Exodus 3:14 says this, God said to Moses, I am who I am. We were talking about, Boone started saying the names of God. And one of the first names he ever says who he is I am. That's his name. What does that mean? That he is present. Sometimes if you're looking for God and you can't find him, it's because you're looking for the past or present, and he's right there in the moment. Because he's I am. If God is a present God, are you a present creation of his? Are you a present human? My friend Ann Viscomte, she says it like this, being in a hurry, getting to the next thing without fully entering the thing in front of me. I cannot think of a single advantage I've ever gained from being in a hurry. Can you? When you're in a hurry, have you ever realized the advantage of that moment? But she says this, being in a hurry has but produced 1,000 broken and missed things. Tens of thousands lie in the wake of all the rushing, all the busyness of life. Through all that haste, I thought I was making up time, but in reality, I was throwing away time. When you are in a hurry, you're not making up time, you're throwing it away. So the first thing of being thankful is being present, being in the moment, not missing the time that you're in, the moment that you're in, the people that you're with, the thing that God is doing right then. so that you could taste it and grab hold of it. So are you present? The second thing is, are you looking? Are you looking? When I was in that plane, and I stopped and I calmed myself, and I was like, I'm going to be in this moment. The second thing I did was Danielle and I made eyes, and there was that smile. And then I began to look out the window and see the incredible vastness of, we were literally flying on the border of Mexico. And so I was seeing Mexico and the United States, and it was just incredible. So the second thing is, are you looking? So I want you to hold your finger out in front of you, about like this length. And I want you to look past your finger. And you don't really take notice of it because you're looking past whatever is in front of that finger. Does that make sense? But now I want you to look at your finger. Everything else around it, even though it's smaller than most things around you, it becomes the central focus point of your eyes. Boone and I love going to South Padre. We go there almost every weekend. And not a lot of people, I know a lot of people buy to get on a boat and go see dolphins, but the truth is, Boone and I probably see dolphins every single time we go to South Padre. Because when we cross over that bridge, I'm looking for them. The majority of those people that are going across that bridge are not looking for dolphins, and so they never see them, ever. I've known people that have been living here their whole life, and they've never seen the dolphins because they are not looking for them. But I see them almost every single time because I'm looking for them. Matthew 6:22 says this, "The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light." What does that mean? What you behold is what you become. What you behold is what you become. What you're looking for is what you're gonna get. It's really simple. And so when you begin to be thankful in your life, good situation, bad situation, if you're looking at your problem, if you're looking at your situation, you're gonna get your situation and you're gonna get your problem. But when you begin to be thankful, all of a sudden you begin to, like this verse says, produce light into your life. And all of a sudden that situation doesn't seem as big and as a problem as it really is. Thanksgiving begins to shift your eyes off of your problem and shift your eyes onto who Jesus is and what he can do in that situation. So are you thankful? Are you looking? 2 Corinthians 3:18 says this, "And we all who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory are being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord who is the Spirit." I believe Thanksgiving is the steps of transformation of your perspective. When you begin to be thankful in your life, your perspective on life begins to shift. Are there some areas in your life that you need to see in a different light? Are there some areas of your life, the way you see yourself, do you need to change your perspective? And Voskemp says it this way, "And when I give thanks for the seemingly microscopic things, I make a place for God to grow within me." When you began to be thankful for the small things, you began to plant small seeds that God is going to grow and produce incredible fruit in your life. Are you looking for the small things in life to be thankful for? Some of you in here, you're like, man, my life is crazy right now. I don't have a lot of things to be thankful for. I promise you, I can probably find at least 10 a day for you. My husband loves clean socks. He loves socks so much. Every day he can wake up and say, God, thank you so much for clean socks. Hopefully, if I've done the laundry. You can find small things to be thankful for. This morning, Boone and I were sitting on our porch. We usually sit there every single morning. And do you know what a hummingbird is? It's tiny. And I'm looking over my sermon, looking over my notes, and he's sitting there, and I think he was just kind of like praying. And all of a sudden, he's like, look, there's 2 hummingbirds chasing each other. Most people would miss that. And in that moment, I stopped and I started to look for them because I wanted to see them. I wanted to be in that moment because I would never have that moment again with Boone. And instead of getting wrapped up in my sermon, I stopped and I looked for those hummingbirds. Are you looking for the small things in life so that your heart can smile again, so that your soul can come alive again, so that you can have peace, so that you can have true joy rather than flaky happiness? Are you looking for the small things? So are you present? Are you looking? And then the last one is, are you entering? Psalms 104, we've already read it, says this: enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. We enter into all that Jesus has for us. We enter into his kingdom. We enter into our identity of who we are, our purpose on earth, when we begin to be thankful. When we begin to be present in our lives, in that moment of who we are, who we're around, what we're doing. And we look for what Jesus is doing, maybe even in that moment. And then we can actually enter in to the beauty and the greatness of that moment. Good or bad, there is beauty in each moment. All you have to do is be thankful, and then you'll see it. Luke 22 says this, 17 through 19. We've read it already. It's giving thanks. It says, then Jesus took the cup and gave thanks. And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, this is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Thanksgiving, giving thanks, is our way of entering into God's grace. Eucharisteo. Grace. If you're needing grace to overcome a problem or overcome a bad habit or an addiction, be thankful. And then all of a sudden, grace will begin to happen in your life. Thanksgiving, giving thanks, is our secret to joy in who he is. I've talked about this before, but Thanksgiving is when we begin to shift our eyes off of what God is doing onto who he is in that moment. And when we don't see what he's doing, we stop doubting because we begin to be thankful. And when we're thankful, we began to lean in and began to trust in who he is. That even though we can't see the problem being fixed at that moment, we're being thankful. And from that place of being thankful, all of a sudden, I promise you, things will begin to change in your life. Ann Voskamp speaks it about this way: the secret to joy is to keep seeking God where we doubt he is. If there's a situation in your life that you're like, God, I don't see you in this situation, find somehow to be thankful, and he'll show you who he is in that situation. She also says it this way: that which tears open our souls, those holes that splatter our sight, may actually become the thin, open places to see through the mess of this place to the heart-aching beauty beyond, to him, to the God whom we endlessly crave. Going back to my moment about my eye, there was literally a hole in my cornea, which was causing a lot of holes in my heart, and a lot of doubt, and a lot of pain. But just like she says here, in that mess, I began to actually see who God is. I began to experience the goodness of who he is. And not only did my eye begin to get better, and it was a miracle that they actually saved my eye, but the hole that was bigger than the one in my eye that was in my heart began to be filled. Not only did I get a transplant eye, but I got a transplanted heart of joy, of grace, of thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, giving thanks, is our way of entering into the fullness of Christ and our salvation in him. It says he is the joy of our salvation. What is joy? It starts by being thankful. Luke 22, 17, 19. There's a phrase right at the end that I took notice. And it says, then Jesus took the cup and he gave thanks. And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it and gave it to them, saying, this is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. So we've always quoted this phrase after specifically taking communion, which is actually called Eucharisteo, which is kind of ironic. But what if God was not only talking about, do this in remembrance of me, when you take the bread and when you take the cup? Yes, I fully believe that. But what if also he's saying, give thanks? Because he didn't just give them the bread and give them the cup, but it says he gave thanks on both occasions, when he gave the cup and when he gave the bread. The first thing he did before giving the cup and the bread was he gave thanks. So today I want us to remember not just who he is, but what he did, and was to give thanks. Because thanksgiving is how you enter in to what he did. Does that make sense? Thanksgiving is what causes us to be present in the moment. Thanksgiving is what causes us to see, to have a different perspective. Thanksgiving is what caused me to believe that Jesus is good, even though I might fall out of that plane. Thanksgiving is what allowed me to see that even though I was physically blind, I could see that God was going to cause and give me a solution at the end of the day. And Thanksgiving allows us to live in his presence, to enter into his presence. And so I'm going to end with this challenge. in Ann Voskim's book. It's called 1,000 Blessings. And when I was going through my eye, after reading that book, I was challenged. I couldn't do much, but I could listen to things and I could write things down. I could read things occasionally. But this is my journal from 5 years ago. And in that journal, I wrote down 10 things a day that I was thankful for. And when I began to do that, my entire life began to shift. How I saw myself, how I saw my situation, how I saw God, how I saw Him in my situation, how I saw others around me. I began to notice the dolphins. I began to notice the hummingbirds. I began to notice heaven on earth. That was always there, but I just didn't have the eyes of thanksgiving. I didn't have eyes of Eucharisteo. So yesterday, I started this challenge again. Because that 1 month ago, when I was like, I've lost the ability to be present, to be fully alive of who I am, God was leading me to this moment, to that plane ride. To jump out of myself, to jump out of my fear. And it's crazy. We were talking afterwards, after the skydive. It's not, honestly, it's not the greatest adrenaline rush I've ever had. I've done it twice and it's not. When you jump, it is the two words that came to my mind is the most freeing moment I've ever experienced. You just feel absolutely free. And then secondly, you feel the serenity of God, the peace. It is so peaceful as you're falling so fast. But it changes your entire perspective because you're looking from a different perspective. And so I'm asking us this morning to jump out, to see in a different perspective, to see with eyes of thanksgiving. And so I started yesterday, and I figured up that if I do 10 things for 100 days, it'll end December 1st. So if you want to catch up with me, write down 20 today. You can be extra thankful. That'll be your launching point. But I'm challenging you to do 1,000 Thanksgivings, 1,000 things you are thankful for all the way until December 1st. And I promise, I can make this promise because I've seen it done before. And I am so hungry and so passionate, again, to have that joy, to have that peace, to have that freedom in my life again, to begin to fully access who God is and His kingdom on earth, and to actually see it and to live in that moment. That I know it's the most simple thing you will probably ever do. But it might be the greatest thing you will ever do as well. Because you will enter into the gates of Jesus. So my 10 things was this yesterday. It doesn't have to be crazy. I wrote down yesterday, last night, was early rises for healthy fitness. I'm thankful for morning joes on front porches. I'm thankful for my husband, the parachute to my wild heart. I'm thankful for the moment in the sky. I'm thankful for friends that jump in life with me. I'm thankful for the wind of freedom and serenity. I'm thankful for Boone's laugh in the waves. I'm thankful for Spanish with Grandma Santos. I'm thankful for matching neon orange swimsuits. Boone and I matched yesterday. It was a little embarrassing. I'm thankful for crossing off bucket lists. It's not spiritual. It's not crazy. God is so simple. So I want us to close our eyes. And we're going to end really simple. I just want you to thank God for 3 things in your life. And then those 3 things you can write down later to start your 1,000 Thanksgivings, 1,000 Eucharisteos. So just take 30 seconds to thank Him for 3 things in your life.
Yes. Wow. Did you receive the word this morning? I believe this is our